All right, so here we go. So yes, we got some very good news about Oblivion Remastered, which also points towards even more good news about potential remasters in the future from Bethesda, plus how Oblivion actually influenced another hit RPG, Expedition 33. And there's one part of the Oblivion Remaster that a lot of players think is a downgrade. We've got to talk about that one. And players are becoming divided about the discussion between Oblivion being better than Skyrim. We're going to get into this one and see what's being said. And Todd Howard gives a quick update about Elder Scrolls 6, plus there's a false narrative going on around the next big Elder Scrolls game. And as always, we're going over your top comments, so be sure to leave a comment down below. All right, so yes, we have some fantastic news about Oblivion Remastered today. Check it out right here. It took Oblivion Remastered a single week to become the third best-selling game of 2025 behind Assassin's Creed Shadows and Monster Hunter Wilds. That is crazy. You got to consider that this game is nearly 20 years old and got a fresh coat of paint, new gameplay updates. But let's get into the specifics about this one. Check it out right here. After just 1 week in the market, Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered is already the third best-selling game of 2025. It was the best-selling game of the week, but we also have this news as well, because guess what? There's another big RPG that I've also hopped into recently, and I'm absolutely loving my time bouncing back and forth between Oblivion Remastered and, yes, Clair Obscur, which Expedition 33 tops the Steam charts. Oblivion Remastered takes second. So Clair Obscur on Steam, it seems, have overtaken Oblivion Remastered. If you guys are skipping over Expedition 33 because you kind of don't like turn-based stuff, give it a shot. I absolutely love it. It is fantastic. But also, you know what? We have this right here, Clair Obscur. Expedition 33 publisher says the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered Shadow Drop actually benefited the game by drawing attention to quality RPGs that week. Finally, gamers are winning big. We got Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, then we got Oblivion Remastered, and yes, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. Couldn't ask for more. Let's keep going with this sort of trend. This is what I want to see more and more. In fact, some people compared this gaming event to another big event that happened. We're talking about, yes, Barb and Hammer. Except, what would we call it here between Oblivion and Expedition 33? Would we call it Oblivion Obscur? What would you guys say would be the name that you would go for bouncing back and forth between Oblivion and Expedition 33? I'll have a single playthrough where I am literally playing Oblivion first, and then I hop into Expedition 33, and it is so good, let me tell you what. Now, also, there is something that we need to talk about. Some players are talking about what they are calling a downgrade for Oblivion Remastered compared to the original vanilla Oblivion. Check it out right here. It says this: the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered players slam an unexpected downgrade. And if we head on over to the actual source here, check it out. Spot the difference, and they highlight the differences between 2006 version of Oblivion armor sets and then, of course, the updated version. There we go, 2006. You can see that it's darker, especially for Blackwood. But look how bright it is for the 2025 version. This got a lot of attention. 16,000 upvotes out here on the community, so hopefully they can update this. Now, we have a comment here. I swear the remaster team hates black armor. So many sets were made gray or changed completely like this. And then also, you can't even have black hair, at least. I haven't found a combination that works. Even black on black comes out light brown. So this definitely is a problem. It needs to be updated. You know, I cover another game called Space Marine 2, and they have some issues similar to this. So I don't know what is going on with the color. So hopefully they can get this corrected, because yeah, you got to have your armor look dark and legit compared to the original version, or it's just not going to feel right whatsoever. Now, we also got to talk about the big discussion that's been stirred up since Oblivion Remastered has released, and that is this one right here. Wait, Oblivion is better than Skyrim? The Elder Scrolls fans are finally seeing the truth thanks to Oblivion Remastered. But I got to hand it over to you guys. Is it the truth? Is Oblivion better than Skyrim in your books? Here's my opinion about that. I think they're both two very different games. And, you know, in terms of lore, story, and other things of that sort, I think they both have some really cool things to offer. Of course, when it comes to Oblivion, it is more detailed, more nuanced when it comes to the spell crafting system. That's where it really is a winner in that regard. I'm kind of curious to see what Bethesda is going to do with Elder Scrolls 6 based on what is happening with Oblivion Remastered versus Skyrim discussion. If they will notice this, if they'll reintroduce a more robust spell crafting system in the brand new Elder Scrolls 6. I really hope that they pay attention to this sort of feedback. But it brought up this topic right here. What is with all the hate for Skyrim? Ever since Oblivion Remastered launched, people are hating so much on Skyrim, saying it's dumbed down, NPCs are dumb, and making it look like Skyrim is utter shit. Don't forget that Skyrim was praised of being one of the best games ever made. And while I can agree RPG mechanics and quests are not its strongest assets, the lore, world building, the atmosphere of the game, soundtrack, and not to mention fixed level scaling in the game is better than Oblivion. I gotta say the atmosphere in Skyrim is just hands down to this day one of the best. You know, the world. Skyrim for me personally is one of the absolute best games ever made. And then Oblivion Remastered came along, you know, this graphics update, the gameplay update. I am in absolute love with this game. So yeah, it feels like I'm reliving like a launch of a game or something like that. But anyway, they go on to say this. I would dare say that Skyrim is still a bit of an improvement in most parts, even when you compare it to the remastered. And when you have the most immense modding scene, literally making the game you want it to be, I think Skyrim is still an extremely good game. I love Oblivion Remaster, but come on, Skyrim is also a masterpiece. It's got 2,100 upvotes. Some comments here. Morrowind players didn't when Oblivion released. Oblivion players didn't when Skyrim first released. And both still do it to this day. So it's a big discussion within the community. And one thing that is, of course, stand out with Skyrim is those dragons, of course. It centers around the Dragonborn. They both definitely stand on their own, and that's why I love the Elder Scrolls franchise. Now, Todd Howard also had some things to say about Elder Scrolls 6. Check it out right here. Todd Howard points to the Elder Scrolls 6 as Bethesda reveals Oblivion Remastered. Obviously, we're working on the 6th chapter here. He goes on to say this right here. Of course, the reveal happened. And he goes on to say this quickly. Obviously, we're working on the 6th chapter here. Before adding, what's great about the Elder Scrolls is being able to look at all of the chapters. That part is the most interesting to me, because maybe, just maybe, they are considering remastering other games in the Elder Scrolls franchise. Again, what would you guys like to see? But this leads me into another discussion about Elder Scrolls 6, because there's a lot of news around it, and there is also some false narratives being talked about and spread about. So we have this article right here. Skyrim lead designer makes it sound like there's gonna be loading screens in Bethesda games for years to come yet, bucko. We just didn't have a choice, really. And the most important note about that headline is that it's actually the former Skyrim lead designer, and he previously worked for Bethesda, currently does not work on Elder Scrolls 6 from what I understand. So he doesn't actually know what is going on with any of the technology when it comes to loading screens, that sort of thing. But let's get into the quote and see what is said here. Give the article the benefit of the doubt. So yeah, it goes on to say this. Add together all the minutes of my life I spent in loading screens, and you could, well, send me into quite a grim, depressive spiral, probably. And since I'm someone with several hundred hours invested across various Bethesda games, how many of those minutes were spent twiddling Daedra artifacts in Skyrim's load screens or looking at cool niche concept art in Morrowind? More than I'd care to count, most likely, given that Bethesda loves hitting you with a loading screen before you transition into an interior. Here's the kicker. It doesn't sound like anything's going to change in the Elder Scrolls 6 or after either. Former Bethesda dev and Skyrim lead designer Bruce Nismith recently spoke to Video Gamer to tell you that, sorry friend, you're going to be loading for a long time yet. It's not that anybody at Bethesda ever wanted to do it, we just didn't have a choice, really. Everybody who complains about that assumes that it's done because we're lazy or don't want to follow the modern thinking on stuff, but he explains that the fact of the matter is that Bethesda games are so detailed and so graphics intensive, you just can't have both present at the same time. And I don't think loading screens has anything to do with how detailed a world is. In fact, if we head on over here, you can see that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt had no loading screens unless fast traveling, and it is by far one of the most detailed open world games through and through in the open world space, all the way into those insanely detailed interiors. So it seems like it's definitely a creation engine issue for sure. And I think with the creation engine, Bethesda has no issues crafting a beautifully rendered world. However, they do seem to have problems streaming a world, and they have to separate it with those loading screens. And I think that's one aspect that Bethesda is probably super focused on right now is getting their streaming technology improved by leaps and bounds. And I think hopefully Microsoft is helping with that sort of thing. In fact, I think Microsoft is setting this up to where Bethesda can communicate around Microsoft Studios, find out what is going on, because they're utilizing their Microsoft Studios, I believe, in the same way that PlayStation does it. You know, all those teams communicate with one another. You even have like Hideo Kojima utilizing the entire engine from the Horizon Zero Dawn dev team. So I really think that Microsoft looks at that and goes, hey, you know what? Let's just copy that type of system. And by the way, that's only one example. There are so many examples I can give you guys where our technology was borrowed from Uncharted 3 with the sand, how it was created and utilized in other PlayStation games. PlayStation has this very cool collaborative atmosphere with all of its dev teams, and it really works. And again, Microsoft is probably looking to that. So I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that they communicate with a lot of these dev teams to ensure that Elder Scrolls 6 does not have many load screens. I think that would be one of their priorities, because even with Starfield, it became such a meme with all the load screens, and I'm sure that they probably noticed that for sure. But I gotta ask, if Elder Scrolls 6 did have those loading screens, like loading screens into dungeons, into houses, into towns, would that bother you? Would you be totally bummed by that? Or are you expecting for there to be limited loading times in Elder Scrolls 6? All right, so you guys know what time it is. It is time to go over your top comments. As always, leave a comment down below. It can end up right here in a future video. So let's see what you guys had to say about my most recent video. Let's check it out. So we have, personally, it feels like my dude can run faster than my horse. What they consider a gallop is really more of a canter, so I pretty much ignore my horse completely. Yeah, anymore, that's how I am as well. But I do wish there was something tied to your horse in terms of more RPG mechanics. I feel like many RPGs kind of don't tap into that enough. However, when it comes to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, you could actually upgrade your horse, do some cool stuff around combat, you know, kind of like stun enemies, and even go on an upgrade path like that. So it would be cool if they could introduce something like that down the road in the Elder Scrolls franchise, making your horse matter a bit more, or even have your horse as a inventory space, as you know, acting like a pack mule of sorts. Now we have one quality of life fix they need to implement ASAP is auto zoom the map when in dungeons, caves, etc. It's stupid that you have to manually change the map while indoors. It is such a pain, and you just have to do it over and over again. So hopefully they can improve that one. Now we have, at this point, I just like some sort of map indicator telling me I've cleared a dungeon. One of the most highly requested features right there. Saw that under the Discord, official Discord suggestion tab, and it was heavily upvoted. So I really do think that's probably on their priority list if they do in fact include that sort of fix or quality of life adjustment. Now you're all asking for dumb stuff. Property to sell. That's not even a feature in the base game or DLC. Sounds so dumb. Kids in a candy store. Hey, I want to see that. I mean, here's the thing. It makes exploring even places that you wouldn't visit more meaningful. You go, there's some really cool shops on the corner street. I don't really go in there often, but maybe I can go in there, work out a deal with the shop owner. Now, in the case of The Godfather, it was really cool. That game, you can go into a shop and then work out a deal with the owner, but you can also open up a racket, some sort of front. So it would be cool if you're working for like some sort of shady thieves den or what have you, and you could operate that sort of way throughout the world. There's a lot of stuff you can actually do with that sort of mechanic that can make it really meaningful to go into properties. And it would bring a lot more meaning behind things like charisma, your personality. Would you want to open up shops to take advantage of them, or would you want to open up like more legit businesses? There could even be missions designed around shops that you invest in. Perhaps there's shortages because carriages are being attacked and you have to solve those problems. Or maybe you can even create shortages for other competitor shops. You can be good or evil even within this sort of gameplay loop. But yeah, that's definitely not going to be a feature in Oblivion Remastered. That's asking for way too much. Next up, we have, people might say they want to see a Skyrim remastered, but as it has been pointed out, we've had multiple re-releases of Skyrim already. What about a Morrowind remaster or reimagining of Daggerfall and Arena? I have never played Arena, but I've also heard Daggerfall would be quite an undertaking considering its map size. It is much, much bigger than anything Bethesda has ever created, even bigger than Oblivion and Skyrim. But Morrowind, I think, would be the one that they would be eyeballing the most. I think that would make the most sense for, Virtuosos to go after. But there it is. Thank you guys so much for all the comments, the love and support on the videos. Greatly appreciate it. Stay tuned here for more news and updates about Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered and yes, Elder Scrolls 6. Thanks for watching and I will see you all next time. Take care.